What's going on, guys? Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net, and welcome to part 2 of our 2022 U.S. Open Finals match analysis between Carlos Alcaraz and Casper Ruud. To find out how Alcaraz beat Ruud in this match, stay tuned because it's coming up next. All right, guys, before we jump into this analysis and the points, let's talk about backhand technique a little bit. And a lot of times I talk about tactics in these videos, but I do also get into technique and Ruud's flawed backhand technique. And specifically, I'll get into this, his contact point is a huge problem with his depth and his ball control and position of his ball on his backhand side. Alcaraz was very aware of this, and they took this backhand apart. So let's jump into the first point, and let's look at that flaw in Ruud's backhand technique within these points and how it cost him. All right, guys, so here we have the first example of that Ruud backhand versus Alcaraz, right? We've got Ruud serving on the far side, Alcaraz returning on the near side here, taking a second serve, again from zone 3 on this particular return. Ruud serves down the tee this time, right? Alcaraz meets it out in front with the contact, eyes focused down at the ball to control it and not give away his direction. And the first thing he does is take that return and goes right to Ruud's backhand. And the technical flaw that exists within Ruud's backhand actually exists with a lot of players on tour's backhand. I just haven't talked about it a ton yet. I've talked about it a little bit before, is the contact point. So the contact point on your two-hander, the spacing on this shot should have both of your hands visibly on the hitting side of your body. And we can see Ruud's hands right here, especially the bottom hand. It's actually close to his navel, or it's close to the middle of his body. So he's jammed on this shot. Now, when you don't have enough space on your two-handed backhand or even a forehand, a couple things tend to happen. Number one, we tend to hit short. If we don't tend to hit short, if that doesn't happen though, we tend to hit balls that are not very good aimed left to right. So we have a lot of issues with our aim and our depth when we're typically too close to balls like this. And Ruud doesn't always get too close to the ball, but he does it pretty darn frequently. It's very important. A lot of recreational players make this exact same mistake and have the same problems. But let's actually see what happens on this ball, right? And what happens? The first thing that we notice with the jam position is he hits short and the ball lands in zone 1. So now that this is landed short, it's an opportunity for Alcaraz to possibly get aggressive, right? Let's see what happens though. And Alcaraz gets aggressive with his depth. So he says, okay, I'm not just going to pummel this one. I'm going to get it up a little bit. Look at that net clearance right there. And I'm going to get it deep in zone 3 and force you to hit that backhand again. And let's see if you jam yourself again. So let's take a close look at this one now with Ruud. This is the second backhand. And what do we see? The bottom hand, again, is in front of his torso. It's not on the hitting side of the body. We're not seeing the proper space here. So again, I'm looking for two things, either a short ball or a poorly aimed ball left to right. Let's see what happens. This one's deeper, okay, so that's great. So he hits this one deep, and it hits zone 3, but the thing that's missing, right, is he's not getting the ball over here like a Djokovic would, where Alcaraz probably can't hit another forehand in the point, or aiming it over here and making Alcaraz pay for his position by running him from one side of the court to the other. So the depth is there, but the left to right control is still missing, okay? Here's another one. Now, Alcaraz doesn't even hit a good ball here because he's receiving the zone 3 ball. He hits short right in the middle of the court. And Ruud again, right, is contacting his third backhand in a row. Let's see if he's jammed though, right? And again, at contact, look at the bottom hitting hand where it is right here. This one's pretty much lined up with the middle of the torso, which tells me once again, Ruud has jammed himself. He needs to get more space on the left side of his body for those hands to clear, so he's getting better control over his left to right aim and consistently better depth. If he fixes this, he will be scary as a tennis player. He's already scary. He'll be extremely scary if he fixes the spacing issue. And this time he has trouble with the left to right aim, guys, right? And he actually misses this ball 6 inches wide or whatever that distance is right there. But the big thing for Ruud to fix is going to be the technique on his backhand, specifically his spacing left to right. He is consistently, not all the time, but pretty consistently too close to the ball. All right, guys, so we're into the second point now, and we're going to look at that backhand again. We've got Alcaraz once again on the ad side and Ruud on the ad side serving here. There's that T serve again. This time, though, Alcaraz takes this one, right, and goes down the line with it, hits zone 2 with some pretty aggressive pace. and gets Ruud on the back foot right here. And when you've got Ruud on the back foot, and it looks like to me Ruud's going to be aiming this ball down the line based on the position of his body here and how he's currently turned. He's not turned as much. If he was turned more, it would tell me he's going a little bit more cross. So I expect an Alcaraz backhand, but because we're going to be getting probably an Alcaraz backhand right here, that means Alcaraz is going to be going back to Ruud's backhand over here more than likely, but let's see what happens. There it is. Zone 3, though, so Ruud gets some really nice depth off the forehand. Alcaraz is a very good two-hander and pelts it right to Ruud's backhand, right? So we get the pattern I just talked about. There it is, right to the backhand. And again, what are we looking for? We're looking for spacing for Ruud on this shot. And what do we get? We've got the hitting hand here lined up with about the middle of the torso. It's being blocked by his body. The hands should be more over here at contact to get proper spacing. So again, we know we're jammed. Now, if I'm on Casper Ruud's team, this is a pretty easy thing to fix just by getting your spacing. And if you want to PayPal me 3 cents, you can go ahead and do that anytime you want, or 2. I'll take anything, 1 cent. But fix that spacing on the backhand. The guy will be even scarier at that point if you do. But he's jammed, so let's see what happens. And voila, we've talked about 2 things that can happen. Number 1, lack of depth, right? So he hits a zone 2 ball short here. So one of the biggest things I see with jammed people, right? They push the ball, they hit it short. Number 2 is the left to right aim that we just talked about. And look where this thing is sitting. Plenty of time for Alcaraz to get around it because unlike like a Djokovic backhand that would be somewhere probably over here or deeper, the Ruud backhand is pretty short and Alcaraz can move around now and pelt the forehand. And that's what he does. And Ruud pays for his backhand right there because Alcaraz goes small target guys, zone 2, gets him on the dead run, slicing, and that signals to Alcaraz now that he sees this position, right? I have damaged you significantly. I've got you stretching and reaching, and you're on the run. I'm coming in behind this. You're hitting with one hand. I'm coming in behind this to hopefully finish an easy volley. Let's see what actually happens. Doesn't have to hit the volley because Ruud feels like he has to do something with it because if he just floats it up, he knows Alcaraz will finish the volley. So he tries to hit this angle to pass him, and it just doesn't work. But what really killed Ruud there, right, was being too close to the ball here on the first backhand to receive in the point, poor spacing, and that lets Alcaraz easily step around to do damage with the forehand, and then the rest is history. So let's move on to the third point now. And just before we jump into this point, let's talk stats really quick on point number 3, right? This has to do with Alcaraz being a tactician and understanding the game and his team understanding the game. So they know Ruud is consistently too close to his backhand at contact, not all the time, but probably 50% of the backhands that he hits. So one of Alcaraz's tactics was to take his serve and get in a position where he could hit a forehand on the first ball and then take his forehand to Ruud's backhand right away. Take it inside out to the backhand, especially off the ad side right here. If we look at Alcaraz's serve plus 1 percentages in this match, he hit 76% of his serve plus 1 forehands inside out to the Ruud backhand area. That's 3 out of 4. So he knew that backhand was going to break down, and he purposely took his own forehand to Ruud's backhand a ton, knowing that it would break down, okay? So let's jump into this third point now, and let's look at the situation. So we've got the serve from Alcaraz. Ruud returning from zone 5. He takes it down the tee. Ruud pushes it towards the backhand side because he's stretching for this right here. He's in a weak position, and this lands very short in zone 1. So this is a very easy forehand from Alcaraz. Alcaraz was already on the ad side here. He takes a couple little baby steps to his left, and then all he has to do from this position is crank that inside out straight arm forehand, and he does that right to Ruud's backhand right there. So again, his serve plus 1, he hits the serve, Ruud hits the return. His first shot in the rally for Alcaraz, 76% of these forehands he was hitting were to the Ruud backhand side, inside out, instead of down the line, inside in. He was immediately attacking this weakness, knowing he had issues with his spacing. He does it here, and look at Ruud right at contact. What do we see, guys? We see it. He's a little bit jammed on this backhand here. Look at the position of his hands. He hits it short and into the net. So again, Alcaraz, very smart tactically, understanding where to hit the first forehand because of that deficiency on the Ruud backhand. Let's jump into the fourth point now. All right, so in this last point, we're going to look at Alcaraz's serve plus 1 again. We've got Ruud here, back in zone 5, Alcaraz serving on the do side. Let's take a look. There's the kick, and he kicks it down the tee. Very obvious kick. I do have a little bit of concern with Alcaraz's kick serve toss being too far to his left and possibly straining that shoulder or straining his back down the road. He's young now. You got to be careful for these technical things. They can become issues with injury. Injury is one of the biggest problems players have on tour. So make sure you don't get yourself injured through technical issues. Ruud takes that forehand down the line. And because Ruud is back in zone 5, right? We talked about this a little bit before on the return to serve in part 1, and he's letting this drop so much. Alcaraz has a lot of time to move around and hit a forehand because how far back Ruud is and how low he's letting the ball drop. This gives time for Alcaraz to move around. If Ruud was closer to the baseline and not letting it drop so much, Alcaraz wouldn't have as much time to dance around and hit forehands. But he does comfortably here. We know he's going inside out. Look at the contact point. If he was going more inside in down the line here, the contact on this shot would be a little bit further in front, but it's a little further back, okay? And then the rotation of his body gives it away, but that contact point really tells me he's going inside out here, guys. And he does that right to Ruud's backhand. And again, what are we looking for in that Ruud backhand? I don't mean to laugh, but you see it a lot, is we're looking at the space. So again, look at the hand. Just blocked off a little bit here in front of his body. It should be more over here, both hands, with that space to make sure he's got the proper spacing from the ball and gets the most out of his shot. Quality of ball matters so much at this level. If you have technical issues, whether it's spacing or a stroke, it can really hurt you at the highest level of the game, which this certainly is. There's a short ball, right? So that hurt him last time. Another short ball. And this one's pretty bad because it's a zone 1 ball and it's also short in the middle of the court. You know, Alcaraz can basically do whatever he wants from this position. So let's see what Alcaraz does. He's lined up for a forehand, right? Inside in. So the first forehand, he goes to the backhand, gets a short ball. And now he says, all right, Ruud, I'm going to move you from one side of the court here to the opposite side of the court. And he gets him on the run. Ruud goes back down the line. And there's no depth here, so it's a little bit short again in zone 1. Alcaraz, excellent two-hand backhand. And look at Alcaraz's space. We're talking about the hands at contact, right? Both hands are on the hitting side of the body at contact, which shows me proper space on this ball. And you can tell Alcaraz is actually not going to hit to the open court here. He's going to actually go behind Ruud and try to wrong foot him. Let's see what happens, though. He does wrong foot him right there. Look at that. Stretches him. Big damage. Ruud with the open racket face here, which signals defense or some type of lob coming, for sure, at least some type of slice. And there it is down the line and forces the air through the damage, right? But again, what all set that up in the very beginning? We had that kick in the very beginning here. Ruud lets it drop too much. Alcaraz moves around, hits inside out. And the first ball on this point is so jammed from Ruud that he hits short, and he lets Alcaraz take control right away because of an issue with his stroke that's not even technically a swing issue, it's a spacing issue. And there were clearly two different tactical approaches in this match, right? We had one guy who's being super aggressive, Alcaraz, and one guy who was playing a little bit more defensive, playing further back in the court. So I calculated the total aggression numbers in this match, and I want to show you those on the screen right now. So total aggression in this match, we had Alcaraz here with 207 total aggression shots. Ruud was at 174, right? So if you look at the categories there, Alcaraz basically beat him across the board in every single aggressive category. So Alcaraz was the aggressor on a court that was rewarding players for being more aggressive. All right, guys, that wraps it up for part 2 on how Carlos Alcaraz beat Casper Ruud in the 2022 US Open Final. If you found this video helpful or you feel like you learned something today, make sure you smash the like and subscribe button. It helps this channel grow. I'm Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. I'll see you next time.